Good morning. I've gotten up. I've had my vitamins. I'm drinking my coffee. I hope you had a good 4th of July weekend. It's Tuesday. Everybody. Welcome to After the Gig. I'm Jesse. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining me here this week. And sorry, I was away last week. Couldn't do it. Finally kind of caved because I really wanted to keep this show. Really good and keep it going and not have to listen to me rant by myself for weeks on end while we deal with this pandemic. But I have accepted the Zoom podcast. The biggest thing for me about talking to people and interviewing people is the fact that I just need to see them. I need to see their face. I need to see their reactions. I need to kind of see the body language and stuff like that. And getting together with someone in the same room, there's really no replacement for that. But the Zoom thing has been great. And, I'm kind of jumping on board pretty late when it comes to that. But better late than never, guys. Today, I have a really, really great guest, Rob Griffith, the drummer from Bronze Radio Return. So Rob and I met each other in 2010. There's a little bit of this in the description of the episode, but in 2010, I was playing drums with Dan Mills. I was also playing drums with my old band, Love in Stockholm, but Bronze Radio Return decided to take us on the road, and we got to hang out. We got to travel around, do the little Northeast regional thing. We got as far south as DC. I think we played New York. And remember, we played the bitter end in New York, and it was just like playing the bitter end in New York. Yeah, there's all this prestige to it because Bob Dylan played there, and countless other musicians played there. But man, that place is a shithole, and I don't necessarily think it's run awesome. It's one of the only clubs in New York that doesn't have a house drum kit, so you're forced to bring your own drums in there, and there's no room. There's no room for anything. There's barely any green room in the back, and it's filled with garbage. So I remember, not this particular instance, but another time I played at the bitter end, I had to bring my drum kit and then take it off onto the onto the sidewalk in New York City in the West Village to pack up my drums. And while people were walking by, we're getting asked if we want to buy cocaine. Like, it was really, really bizarre. But anyway, we met those guys, and they're all from Connecticut. They all went to the Hart School. We had a connection between our guitarist, aka engineer, Mark Adele, because they all went to the Hart School together. So there was that connection there. It was one of those tours where you just go out there and you're friends right from the start, and you do everything together, and it was super fun. We even did tour pranks at the end. I will put the link to the video in the description, but Bronze Radio Return, they had their big trailer, so we would keep some gear in their trailer. One of those pieces of gear was our merch case. So it was like a kind of a suitcase looking road case that had t-shirts, CDs, whatever in it. And one day we found that road case during the tour. We found the road case on eBay. So they had taken pictures. They made a description. I'm going to try to see if Dan has like a screenshot of it or something, but it was pretty funny. So we decided we needed to get them back. And one day we shot a lot of footage, a lot of video from that tour. I'd love to see some of it, but actually from that, we shot footage from that show at the bitter end. So it's them. It's pretty multicam, and then you got everyone in the shot. And I don't know if you know anything about Shreds videos, but we made our own Bronze Radio Shreds video. So that's up on YouTube somewhere. I'll try to find the link and toss it in this description for this episode. But long story short, those guys, they're all so great. Rob has played drums with Stephen Kellogg as well. So we have that connection. We've both done that gig. And we talk about a lot of that stuff. A lot about, I think Rob asked me later on about why and how I joined Carbon Leaf. Get into that story. This is actually a part 1 of a 2-parter because we talked for quite a while. But before we get to the episode, just thought I'd like to tell you about the Patreon page for After the Gig. I've added a new tier. It's a high one. It's a big one. But if you're already in there or if you're new to the Patreon page, you can swap out your current tier level and then swap back when that tier has been fulfilled. It's a one-on-one Zoom lesson of your choice: drums, guitar, voice, or a hang or a question session, whatever you want to do. We'll be hanging, and that's a tier on the Patreon. I can explain a lot of stuff. If you have any, other questions, whatever, Carbon Leaf stuff, doesn't matter. Sky's the limit. So go check that out, patreon.com/afterthegig. And there's also other tiers and ways that you can support the podcast. So moving on, I have a question from Katie Musselman, speaking of Patreon questions and Patreon tiers. Here we go. Let's get in there. Anyways, I'll just skip this first part. The recent concert given by country musician Chase Rice brought up some questions about the artists and responsibility they have during this time. While Rice has asked his fans to be safe for his upcoming drive-in concerts, he has offered no apology or indicated no regret about the approximately 1,000 person show where masks were not in abundant use. From what I read, his team refused to respond, and the venue insists that it could not enforce the physical distancing recommended in the signage posted across the property. So my question is, what do you view as a responsibility of the artist in planning and executing a show during these times? From initially choosing and working with a venue to determine if the show is possible, to understanding or establishing guidelines, even up to imploring fans to follow the guidelines, not only for the safety of those in attendance, but also that they don't blow it for artists who have future shows planned. What do you view as a responsibility of the artist, the venue, the fans? Thank you for that really, really great question. So they're kicking around. I'll just finish it. We are kicking around if our family feels comfortable during the road trip to Richmond for the drive-in show. It is hard to think that it might be the only show that we see for the rest of the year. That might be enough to get us to do the drive. Hope you're well, Katie. Thanks, Katie. A lot there. First of all, Carbon Leaf playing a drive-in show. I don't know how I feel about it because I have to get on a plane and I have to go to the airport and I have to deal with all this stuff. So that is going to be, obviously a risk and a challenge, and it's something I'm thinking about and something I'm nervous about because it's out there, guys. It's out there. Got to wear the mask. It has nothing to do. It's just unbelievable how wearing a mask has been politicized in some way. And I don't understand it. And if someone wants to explain it to me, you can send me an email to afterthegigpod@gmail.com. As far as I see it, it's a small thing that we can all do to protect each other. We're still in the middle of this thing. It hasn't even been a year. So just think about that. It's a small blip and a small price to pay to potentially saving lives. Anyway, so on to Chase Rice. Chase Rice, who the F do you think you are? And I think a lot of the articles that were written about him called him a country star and a country whatever. They're really throwing around that word star pretty pretty willy-nilly, because that guy is not a star. I don't even know who he was before he did this really stupid thing. As far as responsibility falls on everybody. I mean, if the venue couldn't figure out, or if the venue couldn't enforce 6 feet distancing, wearing a face mask, then you don't have the show. You don't have the show. The reason why they aren't commenting is probably because this idiot posted a picture that he wasn't supposed to, and they were trying to pull a fast one because this guy wanted to play a show, was selfish, and wanted to put these people in harm's way. It's like, this is exactly the type of thing, getting that many people in one area, and the exact thing, jumping the gun. You see all the cases rising that are going to get us in another lockdown at the end of the year, in the fall and the winter. It's just inevitable. It's inevitable, especially if people are going to be selfish and just downright stupid. I can't say if those people felt uncomfortable or not, but if they know what's going on in the world, I would feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to be around that many people without a face mask, close in, sweating on each other, singing lyrics. It's like, it's a petri dish. It's just like, someone's gonna get sick and spread this thing. So I don't think it was a good idea. I don't think it was a good look. I think his lack of apology is ridiculous. I support the drive-in shows. I mean, if people are doing it the right way, you have to be able to support it. It's a different thing. It's going to be a different thing, and it's going to be a different experience. And I'm sorry if it's not exactly how you wanted it to be, but we're going through a thing right now. Now, don't get me wrong. I want this to be over. Personally, I'm not like super scared every time I go out the door. When I go outside, I keep my mask below my mouth, or I don't have it on unless I'm around people. I think from what I've read, the dangers of it spreading when you're not around anyone, when you're outside, the risk is incredibly small. That being said, I am not an expert. I am not a doctor. I don't know what I'm talking about. But if concerts are going to go forward in venues, everybody needs to be on the same page. I don't know if this was just a publicity stunt. He just wanted to be the person to say, all right, well, somebody's got to do it first. And he posted the picture to be like, hey, check me out. It didn't matter if it was going to be negative or positive. It was just a way to get everybody to talk about him, which is, I'm doing it, talking about him. If that was the reason why he did what he did, and the venues did what he did, and they wanted to grab that fan base that doesn't think that this thing is real, then I'm sure it was probably pretty effective. I'm sure he has gained fans because of it. And the risk or the reward, if this is even, I don't even know if this is how it is. This is all conjecture, but his reward was way bigger than his risk. People are talking about him, and the people that wouldn't necessarily care about being in a packed venue with a bunch of people without masks or any social distancing, without any tape or guidelines on the floor or whatever, those fans are going to stick with him beyond the time that we all forget about who Chase Rice is. So if that was the goal, it was probably effective. But here's the thing. If you want things to go forward normally, or if you want to get back to that normal place, you got to wear a mask around a bunch of people. You got to do it. It's like, it's common decency. It makes people feel a lot more comfortable. I'm not going to go into a room without a mask and make someone feel comfortable just because I'm throwing a temper tantrum. And listen, I'm definitely not on board with the booking agents. I think what they're doing is irresponsible. Just going ahead without coming together and figuring this thing out in a safe way, and getting on the same page as the rest of the music industry. And again, let me be clear. I'm talking about this specific instance and these specific people that made this show happen. But I understand that people are hurting. People need to get out there and work. If you're not working, it's not good for you. You know, the entertainment industry is not coming back the same way that other, you know, people can go back to their jobs. You know, restaurants are opening back up. They can do takeout food. We can't do anything. We can't. I know Broadway musicians and actors, they can't work. They cannot do it because they cannot go back. And there's been no help. The only help is from the fans that want to support artists and do those great things to help us along and help us not get down in our spirits. But there's gonna be artists and there's gonna be bands that don't make it out of this, that take other jobs and cannot get back into it, and it's sad. It's not a good time for artists right now. Not a good time at all. And everyone's trying to figure something out and adapt to it. But the arts are important. And I can't stress it enough. And I know it's an intangible for a lot of people. And it's like, oh, we don't, you know, that's not something, but it's our culture. It's culture. It's culture in this country. It's culture around the world. It's just so important, and it's getting such little respect. And there isn't a leader in the fight to try to get it back or try to get some help. You know, you have bailouts going to billionaires, and we don't see anything. I don't know if it's because they think that the job is not a viable job and it doesn't mean anything, but I'm sorry. If you're not listening to music or watching movies, how many Netflix shows, how many Hulu shows or whatever, Hulu originals and current shows have you watched during this whole thing? I think I've watched them all. Those people can't work. They can't work. And like the powers that be don't give a fuck. They do not give a fuck about us. And that's the truth. That is the truth. So I don't know if signing a fucking petition that just gets lost on the internet is going to do anything. But I'll tell you what definitely isn't going to do anything. It's going out there and being an irresponsible artist, an irresponsible venue. That venue shouldn't be able to fucking open again after what they did. Fuck those people. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Everybody here is suffering, and he goes out there and plays a show as if nothing is happening. You know, they're already calling for restaurants and stuff to shut down again in California, Texas. It's like it's inevitable that the damage of opening too soon is going to put us back to where we were. You know, the damage to artists and bands and stuff is going to be irreparable. It makes me really mad. It makes me anxious. It makes me cringe. So that's just kind of where we are. We're just going to get lost in the in this thing, and then that'll be it. Everything will eventually come back, and then the arts will have to scrape and claw their way back. And it's not bad enough that funding for the arts and everything have been grossly cut. Some of my best times growing up were in the band room and choir, and you know, I'm sorry to tie all this together, but it's really bad. It's really, really bad. And a lot of those cuts started happening when I was in high school and in middle school, and we made the best of it. And then you see sports and everything thrive. And I'm not saying anything bad about sports. I think sports are great. You know, I'm just using it as an example, but it's an outlet for kids who have nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. They can put their headphones on and escape into a different world. It's for, the businessman on Wall Street that is so stressed out of his mind that needs to sit in the car and wind down and listen to some music and probably do a bunch of drugs, but also listen to music after a long day of wanting to jump off a building. It's for everybody. And it's not getting the respect it deserves. It's not getting the help it deserves. And it's in danger of going away. And I don't think we can survive without that. So, not to get super heavy, and this has been longer than I thought it would be, but long story short, to answer your questions, fuck the venue, the artist, they're assholes. They're pieces of shit. It was incredibly stupid, and I think that if they apologized about it and they said it got away from us, sure, understandable. You wanted to get out there, we get it. But the fact that they're not apologizing and they don't give a shit means they don't care about you. So that's it. I am done with the spiel. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Rob Griffith. And I forgot to mention, at the end of this is a sneak preview, exclusive, of their new song, Still Wandering. So make sure you stay tuned for that. It's a really, really great song, really, really great band, and a really, really great guy. Please enjoy this conversation with the great Rob Griffith.
Meet me by the river when the sun's going down. Make a little fire, pass a bottle round. Ain't no pants, so follow on the sound. Oh, I see you down there. You can tell to your friends, and they can never find. Lord, be hell and Jack and Jim are right.
I feel like we've reached a whole other like thing that we're not used to as humans. Just like, all right, where's the finish line? Especially for people like you and me who our livelihoods kind of depend on playing in front of people and doing entertainment-esque things. It's just been like, it's been a little difficult, and just to not know when it's going to end has been tough. Has been pretty tough mentally.
That's the scary thing, is just not the unknowns of, when will the concert industry come back online? When will we be able to safely tour again? How will it get phased back in? Yeah. It's not like one day everyone's just going to be able to start hitting the road again, with all the planning that goes into everything. We're going to look at months of lag time before, even once it feels okay to go back out and tour, it's just impossible to plan for it right now.
Right. Yeah. And, with, I don't know about you guys, and we'll get into what you guys have going on, but Carbon Leaf pretty much books like a year in advance. And, we're just looking at things and in my head, I'm like, all right, well, if the summer gets canceled, which it has, if the summer gets canceled, then if people want to reschedule, everyone is kind of like, all right, we'll cancel this, but we'll reschedule a few months out, see what happens. Now you're running into people's fall tour dates in the same venues. You can't really reschedule past a certain point. So I think most of the summer stuff has moved to either next summer or next spring. Who knows? So it's just kind of, I'm worried about the fall. I'm not very optimistic about fall touring.
Have you guys talked with your agent and kind of took the temperature on what the promoters are saying for the fall? Or
everybody, the way that it's been expressed to me, it's like just a moving target. No one's making any decisions on anything because no one wants to be the first one to pull the plug, because then you're like breaching your contract and you don't get, whatever deposit, you have to return whatever deposits they've made, or so everyone's playing like a game of chicken. And it's like this weird thing. It's like, all right, well, we all know what's going to happen here. It's like it's not out of our control. And I saw that this this article you just sent me, like one of the first lines is Live Nation is reportedly making drastic changes to the performance fees artists receive and is shifting the burden of risk for concert and music festivals to the performer, which is like, cool. We don't have it bad or unfair enough.
Right. We're not already the little guy here. Let's make it worse.
Yeah. Let's just step on them when they're down,
I had to do a double take when I read that article this morning. I was just like, this can't be real. They're going to cut artist fees. I think the one that really got me was that they now, if an artist has to cancel for their own reasons, that they'll have to pay Live Nation 2 times what their artist fee was.
What?
Did you see that paragraph?
No, I honestly, I just opened it up. So you can like kind of give me the skinny or the lowdown here, but like, oh, wait a minute. It's
pretty short. Yeah.
It's pretty short. No, I didn't see that. So what?
So, you guys, you have to cancel because your singer's sick or something. And, you're expected then to pay back double what they were supposed to give you is what they're saying there, which.
So they're just trying to recoup everything they've lost, and they're taking it from the people that are making them the money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And I think
rotten.
A lot of this is geared towards like that upper echelon of touring, the
Right.
stadiums and arenas and stuff. But I mean, Live Nation owns a lot of venues around the country, and a lot of them are smaller. I mean, they have venues down in the, few hundred capacity range all the way up. So, this very well could start affecting bands like us, like ours too.
Well, isn't the Paradise Live Nation?
It could be.
Because Paradise and Brighton Music Hall, I'm pretty sure are both Live Nation venues. And just to do that to the artists and performers that play in those two places, it's just gross. It's just gross that they would that's even an option.
Right.
I don't know. I guess Sinclair, where we play, I'm just trying to think of the Northeast venues that would mostly affect us, but I think Bowery is Sinclair and
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember who else is Live Nation, but unbelievable, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just, finding another way to take another dollar out of the artist's pocket.
I just wonder, like, who is this just Live Nation making these decisions?
That's the sound of it. And this is a very initial thing, because I think what they said in that article is it was a letter that was sent around to the agencies about how they're going to change this policy now. So, I mean, I think what'll be very interesting to see is how this trickles down in the rest of the industry, and if other promoters are going to follow suit, or if other promoters are going to say, you know what, this is terrible for the artists. We can't get behind this, and maybe there'll be other promoters who will take a stance against it. Maybe AEG will do something different, or the Bowery Presents of the world will do something different. But it's tough to say at this point. I mean, I'm sure we'll find out more in the coming weeks.
Are you mostly dealing with this stuff when it comes to Bronze Radio? I know that yeah. Is that pretty much your ballpark with you guys?
I mean, a lot of the business side of things, as far, I'm kind of the business representative for the band.
Yeah.
We have our team of people that do various things, but we've always been very hands-on since day one, and that came from us doing it all ourselves for a while until we were able to slowly assemble a team. And so, yeah, I was, in a way, I was our initial manager when we were first getting going, and booked a lot of our shows as well. And so I've always been very involved with all of that. In the loop, yeah. Yeah, and I'm fascinated by the industry, and I know, like you, like we both studied music industry in college, right? You studied music business at Berkeley, right? And we had very similar paths in that regard. Oh, you hear me?
Yeah. I hear you came back. So yeah, I studied music business. I was, pretty much messing around and partying and not being a great student most of the time. Probably not as good as you, but
I don't know. I bet we could compare report cards. Yeah.
I hope that stuff never sees the light of day. I didn't even want to show my parents my report cards. Anyway, I mean, what a lousy business to get into, right, Rob?
Right now it just feels like about the worst it's ever been, unfortunately. Yeah. And it's so great in so many ways. I mean, I think there's so many amazing artists. There's so many like innovative companies doing really cool things in music right now. But then you read something like this, what we were talking about with Live Nation. And it's just like, it's a reality check that, I don't know, we're all kind of subjected to these bigger players and what they want to decide happens for the whole industry, kind of the same way Spotify and Apple changed everything a decade ago. And
right. I am excited to see what the bands like the Bronze Radio Returns of the world, the Carbon Leafs of the world, like the do-it-yourselfers. I am excited to see how these bands and these artists and these people come out of it, like, just scrapping and fighting for everything that they get. I am interested to see what the transition ends up being for these bands, because I don't see how bands. Ethan is making an appearance. Bands like these just won't like lay down for stuff like that, and they'll fight tooth and nail for every dime. And I'm surprised that in that article or that other things that come out, they will be like, all right, we're going to take a higher percentage of your merch sales. A lot of people don't understand that venues will take merch ticket sales, they'll take VIP ticket sales, percentages of that, and upping those percentages. I'm surprised, I'm sure they can get away with it with some lesser known artists that need to play in these rooms, that want to play in these rooms. But I think it's going to be moving to a more DIY approach for even venues, more backyard things, people doing it themselves, selling their own tickets. I don't know. Right. I don't know. I don't see 600 people in a room jam packed in the in the near future. That I think it's going to happen again, but I don't know.
Right, but we're probably. I mean, we got to be at least a half a year away from that starting to happen again. If not a lot longer. Some people are predicting it'll be this time next year or even the fall of 2021 before things are back online. I mean, obviously that's all dependent on a vaccine. I think that's really the only thing that's gonna end this, Yeah, the testing, vaccine, whether there's a big spike, like for the second wave, and people are talking about how the spikes now are the second wave, and they're not. It's this. We're still in the first thing, and I think depending on what happens in the fall. And a lot of the stuff that you hear is all doom and gloom. It's like, it's going to be so bad, but we don't know. Nobody knows. And that's the biggest problem, like, I face, is that, like, mentally, is that we just you can't make any plans. You can't plan ahead for anything. And when you're used to planning your tours a year out, like you're saying, you guys do for Carbon Leaf, and we've been doing it the same way for the last few years as well. And like, you're right. How the hell do you plan for anything at that point?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
And like what you were saying before too, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, if every band survives this. I mean, I know that not every venue is going to survive it, and we're starting to hear about venues shutting down, and you got to wonder how many bands are just not going to be able to make it without having their touring revenue or have to go on some kind of hiatus. I mean, I have friends that are in full-time touring bands that had to go take on 9-to-5 jobs right now, doing either remote work or some kind of manufacturing or just something. And it's, it's sad to see. I mean, I'm glad they're able to make ends meet, but it's the reality for the touring musician right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, you have to do what you got to do. It's like, it's every industry right now that is having struggles and people needing to get jobs. I mean, I have to play guitar and sing on Facebook Live. I mean, it's come to that, Rob. It's come to that.
You do an awesome job at that, though. I love tuning in. So
yeah,
keep those going.
So you mentioned DIY, or we were talking about DIY stuff. Mm-hmm. You guys, I have a drum head that you guys all signed from that tour that we did together in 2010. Dan Mills and
wow, yeah,
you guys. So I have very fond memories of that tour. That was really, really fun. That was one of the first times that I was. That was like one of the first tours that I did with Dan that we actually did a lot of traveling around. And it wasn't a ton of, I think it was just Northeast and maybe DC and stuff. But I remember...
Right, we did 10 or 12 shows on that tour. It
was fun. I think we might have got as far south as was it only DC? It
might have been DC, or maybe we went down to like, I don't know, maybe Charlottesville or something like that. But yeah, definitely DC. I seem to remember us playing the Iota Club.
Yes, we played the Iota.
Yeah.
Is that place still there?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure on that. I hope so. That was a cool little spot in Arlington.
That was a cool spot because I think we played there another time. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't with you guys. I have a terrible memory when it comes to that stuff. But I just recall the sheer like magnitude of your guys' setup and how you guys brought everything, all the road cases, because I wasn't used to any of that stuff before, and now I play like Carbon Leaf is the king of the road case and too much stuff on the road, but with no help. But how did you guys start doing that? Was it more of a we want to take control of our own show kind of thing, or I don't know, do you guys just like a lot of stuff?
We needed a good workout before and after every show. Yeah. You know, we needed to find a way to stay in shape.
Didn't have enough money for gym memberships, so we just bought a bunch of stuff to move in and out of
road
venues.
Case, you got a gym, exactly. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to remember exactly what I think. Well, Packy, Packy from our band, he came from another band that had done a good amount of touring prior to Bronze Radio starting.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Okay. And he kind of showed us the way of like, this is how we do it if we want to do it for real. And so, we went out and we got a van and we got a trailer and did the whole thing. And then when you start putting your nice instruments in a trailer, if they're not in a road case, they're just going to get destroyed. If you're putting drums in soft bags or something, it's tricky. So we just had to go out and get all that stuff together, and we figured it out as we went. We made all the mistakes. We broke gear in that trailer, and we were like, oh shit, okay, we gotta spend the money to get the actual good stuff to protect this. And but yeah, we've never been shy of overdoing it, I guess you could say. And even to this day, and we're still very much a DIY operation. Before we didn't really have any crew starting out, and now depending on the tour or the situation, we'll take out anywhere from maybe 2 to 4 crew people. But and it's nice to have those extra hands, but of course we're still very much doing a lot of that ourselves. So in a way, we want to make it easier on ourselves, but at the same time, we don't want to do that at the expense of feeling like we're missing something in our show. And recently that meant bringing out a whole lighting rig that we ran off of a laptop on stage and had to set up and tear down every night. And
you guys ran it on stage?
We did, yeah. We ran it. We synced it with our backing tracks so that every night it would do the same light show. So we had somebody who programmed the lights for us. Yeah, it's really cool. It's like you do it through MIDI, and it just added this extra element to the show where it just happened automatically. So we didn't have to bring a lighting director around, which is nice because that's a very expensive thing a person to travel with.
Oh yeah,
and even at the level that we're at, there's not a lot of venues where there's going to be a lot of consistency in the lighting setups. So this way we had full control where we kept it consistent every night, and on every downbeat or every hit or whatever, there was a lighting cue that was synced with it. And so having that consistency every night was huge, and it gave us more confidence in just how the show looked and was presented. But it was a lot of work. It was an extra hour of setup every night on top of the many hours already. And so we're never afraid to do that work, but as we get into our 30s now, it starts to hurt our backs a lot more. And
now the Carbon Leaf guys 40s and going on 50 in the van. So yeah, it's hard. I mean, I always want to set up a time lapse camera before the setup every night, because we do travel with a lighting rig and a lighting guy and Doug Ross, who I believe Doug, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so Doug does a great job, but everybody works, everybody moves stuff, whether it's Barry setting up merch, and people get to come and see the final product of what you've been working on since 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. But it's just it's so much stuff, and then that hour out, sometimes 2 hours of setup, and then sound check, and then the show goes by like that, and then it's time to do it all over again. It's the shortest part of the day. It's the best part. That's what makes it all worth it. What they say, you get paid to set up and break down.
Yeah, paid to travel and set up gear, and the show's the reward. The show is the reward.
That's part of the payment. But yeah, I mean, I always not envied, but I looked like you guys really were doing it the right way. And I feel like when we went on that tour with you guys, it really showed us oh shit, these guys have their shit together. And whether it was Dan working on a song with Chris, or in the green room or something. I think it was at Tammany Hall in Worcester. I remember all these little random things, them working on a song in there, and then they had one of those ring games where you drop the ring and you try to hook it on the hook that's up against the wall. They had one of those there. I don't know. I remember the stupidest shit. It's all these cool things that you guys did that kind of added up to a really fun and really educational experience for us.
Right on, man.
So
Thanks.
I would love it if we could do that again. That'd be great.
Hell yeah. And I think that was the first time we all met. I think that was the first time I met you was on that tour, right?
It was, because I never made the connection with you guys and Mark Adele, and I didn't realize that you guys all went to Heart, and that was a really cool, it was the perfect opening and headlining scenario, because there was a connection between both bands, and that allowed us, we didn't have that oh, we're not going to talk to the opener, or we're not going to talk to the, no relationship between the two bands. We were always doing stuff together, and we built really good relationships with each other. So it was such a fun time. It was great.
I feel like we were all just best friends from day one, which was, you can't ask for much more when you're touring. It's
so rare.
We've all been in situations where, we've probably toured with people that, I'm not going to say we've ever toured with anyone we don't like, but certainly have been in positions where there's people that we like touring with more than others. And
yeah, for sure.
And obviously you guys are at the top of the list.
Yeah. If you're in any job, it's good vibes, bad vibes.
Right. Exactly. But we did pretty much everything together on that tour. I remember we did a couple radio station visits together, and we just, all of us in the room together and doing these big open interviews with everybody, that was amazing. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was great. That would be, when all this mess is over, I would love to do the Dan Mills Bronze Radio tour again. That'd be great.
Let's mark it down for post-COVID 2021.
10 years ago. That was 10 years ago.
That was a decade ago.
Wow.
Holy shit.
Wow.
Man.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, a lot has changed.
Still one of my most prized possessions, that drum head that everyone signed. That was great.
Cool. Right on.
So going from bands that have a ton of shit on the road, actually, guess this wouldn't totally match up with that, but you did the tour with Steven where it was just you and Steven. What was that?
Oh, yeah.
What was the name of that tour?
That was called, I think he called it the Every Night is a Little Different tour.
Every Night's a Little Different tour. I do like the way how he names all the tours. It's pretty clever, and he gets all the lanyards and the sweatshirts. It's pretty
right.
It's pretty legit how he does everything. What was that like? I know it's always a struggle, and I did a tour with Steven where it was me, him, and Andy Sorensen.
Right, yeah.
And it's always difficult when there's no bass and there's drums. Every drummer I feel like feels like that way when you're missing a little bit the low end and you have to cover more than your ears want to. You know what I mean?
Sure.
What was that like playing all the shows with just him? I bet there was like a bit of freedom in it.
There was definitely some freedom, and I think it was one of the first times as a drummer that I had to look at things less like drummery. Okay. And because, to play a lot of those songs, if I would have played the same groove that was on the record where there's a lot more instrumentation and a bass player and some keys and some thicker guitars happening, it would have felt really empty. So I think it was about, in a lot of the cases, it was about simplifying those parts so that they didn't feel too like rock and roll, but maybe more like a percussionist would approach like folk music. Okay. And so so it was a lot of brushes, because I feel like brushes are always great in those kind of scenarios because they just can fill up more space just by the way that they can sustain on the drum. I had my SPD pad, my electronic drum pad with me, and on that I had like some keyboard sounds queued up. So if I knew there was like for example, like on My Favorite Place, there's that bang, very, bang, bang. Yeah. It's a very simple melody, but it's very important to the song. Right. And so what I would figure out a way that I would just program that out in the pad, and I knew what pad corresponded to what note, and I would play that while maybe I was playing kick and shaker with the other hand. And
that's cool. Just
a way to like add some other layers in there, because I think no matter what, if you're in a 2-person band or a 5 or 6-person band, there are certain elements that you just don't want to be without. And to me, like some of those songs would have felt empty if they didn't have those really key melodies. And I never play melodies, but it was like I had to figure out a way to adapt and try to throw as many layers in there as I could, and then plus the singing, of course, which you do a ton of, and you're so amazing at. I wish I had the voice that you had, but I try.
You have a great voice, Rob.
I can blend, but that's about it.
But the thing is, not everyone can do that. Not everyone can do that, and the trick to it is, and I find some people are easier to blend with than others, because that has to do with the timbre of your voice and how much they move around. Steven is such a consistent singer that it made it easy. It's easy to sing harmonies with Steven, and you do it so great. I feel like it came very naturally for the timbre of my voice and the range of my voice to do it with him. I don't have as easy of a time singing backgrounds with Carbon Leaf, because Terry covers a lot of the range that I would normally hit, and he does a lot of thirds and fifths in his parts, so I have to really weave my way in and out, which is a challenge, but but especially singing harmonies with Steve, it was just amazing how consistent it was, which made you able to, or made me able to kind of fix my performance from night to night and be able to do things and just get better at them. And like you said, those signature melodies and those signature parts, that's another thing of how not particular, but we always worked on those parts. Those parts always had to be there because they were so important. There's such key elements to the songs that people need to hear. That's awesome that you did that on that tour. That's really cool.
Thanks. And yeah, like you're saying, you know, Steven is incredibly easy to sing with, because you're right. I mean, the consistency is so nice. And another really good point you just brought up is that he leaves that freedom, I think, for both of us. I think we both kind of sing in the same range and probably a lot of the same lines that we've sang with him over the years. And I think that's just where my ear tends to go, and I'm sure you're the same in that regard. And then when you get into a situation, like when I sing with Bronze Radio Return, you know, now we have 5 guys on stage singing. And so, you know, somebody will kind of take maybe that more intuitive part that, you know, you almost hear immediately when you hear a melody.
The meat and potatoes.
Right, exactly. And then it's about figuring out how do we layer in these other parts so that it doesn't feel like we don't want to make it too colorful, and that we're not going to add like a bunch of sevenths and ninths and, you know, jazzy kind of chords. But how do we make it feel big and get everybody's voice in there so that it's blending, and sometimes that can be a real challenge, and maybe sometimes we're probably guilty of overdoing it too. You know, sometimes we maybe don't need 5 voices in there when we could get away with 2 or 3. But we always try to make sure everyone has a part for almost everything.
Well, you guys are a musically smart band. Like, you guys all went to music school. You all have an understanding of what's happening kind of under the hood of the songs. But that's actually an interesting thing that, like Carbon Leaf, I know that Barry particularly, people hear harmony in very different ways. Like, naturally, like you said, the part that someone is naturally going to go to is usually the third. And not to get too music nerdy about it, but usually you'll hear a third and a fifth, and that sounds like a really nice, pretty chord, and it sounds very lush and great. Sometimes you'll add the seventh in, whatever. And Barry, like, hates to have it sound so predictable. So that's some, like, there's a lot of interesting harmonies and lots of close, like, tension and stuff in the harmonies, which makes it difficult to remember the things live, especially if you're like me, like not a hired guy anymore, but if you're coming in and you're trying to find your place in the harmony, it's tough. It's really, really difficult when even some of the harmony parts, since they're so unique, those are signature parts. So you don't want to you don't want to step all over a harmony that someone is used to hearing. Like, I wouldn't be able to change the harmony in What About Everything or like Life Less Ordinary. People would kill me.
And that's a great point. I mean, and especially as a drummer, and I'm not trying to make any excuses for drummers here, but as a drummer, you don't have anything that you're actually playing that's giving you a pitch reference. And so, you know, you're relying on the other instruments. And for the intuitive stuff, you know, that's fine. But you're right when you say you have a very intricate part where like the movement is very close together, and sometimes maybe you're only like a step away from somebody because it's something more colorful. It's very hard as a drummer, I find, to like always nail that without a lot of practice. And just because I can't be like, where's my start? I can't just like strum a chord and be like, I know where my starting note is in that chord, like maybe somebody else on stage could. I don't know if I'm putting that eloquently, but
no, I know what you mean. Like, you say you're on a root chord, but your note is a ninth, so it's hard. Right. It's hard to pick that out right off the bat without either singing it before you hear it, or, you know, doing the thing where it's like, this is my part, and here I go, now I'm singing it, and now I'm out, and then now this is my next part, okay, now I'm singing it. So that
you're solfeging it to the side of the stage, like
Luckily, I'm lucky. I have relative pitch, so I can kind of pick things out that I've heard before. I still have to practice stuff, but I can kind of get in there before. I can fake it. I can fake it more than most people. But yeah, it is a difficult thing when you're trying to work things out, especially with 5 people like you guys. Like, who is singing who out of you guys is singing most of the, the meat and potatoes parts?
I'd say that usually Matt, our keys player.
Matt is? Okay.
Yeah, he's kind of, I would say he's
quietly working the levers.
Exactly. He's more or less like the secondary singer in the band.
Okay.
But we've made a couple lineup changes in the last couple years. We have 2 new guys that have been playing with us, and both of them have amazing voices. So for this last tour that we did with them, they had a lot more responsibility singing wise, and it brought a lot to the table, and it took some of that pressure off of me, because being back there now there was a lot going on. I mean, when we were talking about the lighting stuff before, and like I'm running that all back there,
wow,
while drumming, singing. It feels like a lot sometimes. And again,
it is
just
a lot.
Something you just have to practice it. When I practice for a tour now, it's kind of like making sure I just have all these electronic cues happening right, more than it is actually practicing the drums themselves,
Right.
And just getting used to like that muscle memory of, all right, I hit this then, and because sometimes you're starting starting a backing track or like the lights in the middle of a song, because maybe it starts off and we want it to flow tempo wise, and then we get to a point where it's like, all right, that's got to kick in. So if you miss that, then and then if you miss that cue, then it throws off. It can throw off the rest of the tune, and not that it's going to mess up the guys in the band, but it'll mess up the way that the show looks, because then the lights won't be there. And so it's so what I was getting at though is it's nice to have those guys who are amazing singers take some of that off of my plate now.
That's pretty awesome. I thought I had it bad. I just started using Roland SPDX pad on the last tour that we did, and I thought I had it bad, having to hit literally one pad for one song. And then I had like a tambourine
in there. That one pad, man. If you missed that one pad.
Seriously though, if that one fucked up, it was bad news. That's a potential stop and restart. Yeah.
I have such a love-hate relationship with electronics on drums.
I know.
It can be such an amazing thing, but it can also just derail.
It can derail. It's amazing. I remember when I first got my Roland sample pad, I was so excited, but then I didn't use it for like a year, and I was like, I need to use this thing. They're expensive and they're such powerful tools. I just, I pretty much forced it upon Carbon Leaf to be able to use it, and it worked out. It's great, but you talk about a love-hate relationship with that thing. It's like, I'm not super technically savvy when it comes to making samples and, importing them into the thing and organizing it. And when it comes to file organization, I am the worst. You should see my desktop right now. But it's like, finally, like when I finally got it working and hit the thing and it all worked the way I wanted it to, it was like the biggest, celebration. It was like, holy fuck.
Such a win. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. It was like, I'm going to use this all the time now.
Right. Then it like opens up that door, that part of your mind to be like, okay, now that I got that, I can, maybe I'll take it to this place and try this.
Yeah. And then you got to watch yourself that you don't go too far in that direction.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll never forget. I got kind of a funny story. I was touring right after college. I was touring with a Broadway show, just playing in the pit. And the whole tour was on Roland V drums, like electronic drums.
Okay.
And what they had done was they had mapped every scene out for every part of the show. And so I had to, toggle between like, here's, act one, here's the next song, so you got to hit like an up or down button to get through all that. And I remember it was my first show of the whole tour, and I came in the middle of it because I was subbing for somebody for 2 months or so. And first show, and it's at this like really quiet part where I'm just supposed to hit this one tom beat, but I forgot to change the scene, and that particular pad was programmed to be a bongo roll. Oh. So like I hit this expecting it to go doom, and it just goes and it doesn't stop. And I'm sitting there like panicking. The people on stage are like, what is going on? That is not what's supposed to be happening. It was
and if there's one thing actors are good at, It is adapting to the situations around them.
And holding a grudge too, apparently.
Yeah, really good at that. Oh my God.
But luckily I didn't get fired, but I thought I was going to for a second there.
That is, oh my God. Your whole body must have gotten cold. Oh my God. That's not a great feeling, but it happens
I'll
to
tell
everybody.
you what, I never made that mistake again.
Oh, of course not.
That was the lesson.
Of course not. What, do you care to say what show it was?
Oh yeah, it was Evita.
Evita?
Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, all that.
Oh yeah.
kind of stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you did that.
Yeah, it was a very brief thing that I did, and a friend of mine was doing a lot of Broadway shows at the time, and he needed a sub for a little while, and those tours go out for like 9, 10, 11 months at a clip.
Yeah.
And at that point my reading chops were pretty good, and so I got, they sent me the book and figured it out and went on the road with them for a bit. And so it was a way different thing than touring with a band, but I guess it was in a way my first touring experience, because before that I was mostly playing local kind of stuff, and then that was my first chance to get out and see the country and travel around playing music.
So cool. There's no better life experience than getting out and traveling, and especially playing music.
Yeah.
You mentioned the personnel changes in Bronze. Was that mostly a musical direction kind of thing? You guys are doing different stuff and you wanted to switch things up. Like, what kind of prompted that? I don't know how much you want to feel comfortable getting into, or
I'm definitely down to talk about it. I can only say so much about it, but I will say that in one of the instances it was definitely like a musical direction kind of thing, and as we evolved as a band, our sound changed. I mean, if you go and listen to our first record to the most recent one that we put out, there's a lot of things that are that are different about this band.
Very different.
And we started off with, even our very first stuff was almost more bluesy than anything. It was kind of like blues roots rock, and then we ended up getting really inspired by things in the studio and just different sounds, and we kind of took more of this indie direction. But because of how much that sound started to change over the years, we just didn't quite have the same needs for certain sounds that we once did, and so we had to make one change there, and then for the other one, it was a band member that actually just needed to leave the band for some personal reasons. And we're on good terms, and that's great, and we wish everyone the best, and we're very happy with the guys that we have now. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's nice. It's nice when things work out like amicably, and it's always a tough situation, because you travel with people for so long, and you know them so well. You guys are like essentially brothers, and it must have just been really tough. Either way, whether it's a good thing overall. It's a good thing overall for the band moving forward, but it must have been tough, and
Yeah, it is. It's like you said, it's a family. Those are, I've spent more time with my bandmates than probably anyone else in my life, aside from maybe my wife and my parents. Yeah. So, you're right. It's a very tough thing to part ways with people that you spend that much time with and have that much history with. And at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but sometimes this is a business as much as it is art and fun, and but sometimes you just have to make certain business decisions.
Yeah. Well, then when you want to move forward, it's not like you're playing in the garage once a week and then maybe gigging once a month. It's like it's your life, and if you want to move forward in a different direction, you have to be able to make the decisions to do so. And to do it is hard, and decisions are tough, and you have to make them when you have to make them.
Yeah. And actually on that note, I don't know if I ever, and you can stop me if you're not okay talking about it, but I don't know if I ever heard the story of how you ended up with Carbon Leaf, and kind of how that shift happened?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm trying to think of the timeline, because I've been in a lot of bands, Rob. A lot of bands.
I know, man. I've seen them all. Well,
Yeah.
most of them.
So I was on the rock boat with Kellogg, and we were doing. It was my first rock boat. I was trying to meet as many people as I possibly could. You guys weren't on that boat. You were on the one after that, but I met Carter and we kind of jammed a bit. I had known Doug, sound guy, because he had done Tour de 40 with Steven.
Okay.
So that was kind of like a connection between the two bands, and I played a bit with Carter. Carbon Leaf was going through a million drummers that year, and they had a lot of changes, and they found like Kurt Leone played with them from the alternate roots, and he was just he has a lot of stuff going on, and I'm sure he sounded great with those guys, but they needed somebody for it was like their holiday tour. So it was a few shows, kind of a tryout sort of thing. I had to learn a lot of material in a very short period of time, which isn't the most fun thing to do, because I have kind of a nightmare story about doing that with Steven for the first time. It was
we'll get to that.
We'll get to that one. That's a fun story, but it's actually a really great and kind of inspiring story. But I got offered to do those shows. Barry sent me an email, kind of connected the two of us. I went down to Richmond, hung out with them. We all really clicked. I hung out with them kind of every hour of the day, and it was great. Really, really connected well. The music was great, and Steven was transitioning more to solo tours. He was starting to work on the book, and also I think he really missed playing with Boots. I think the connection that they've had for such a long time with the Sixers, and their relationship over the years, I think that is who needed to be behind the drums. And maybe he didn't know it at that time, but I think he's loving it now. So Carbon Leaf asked me. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, so did Carbon Leaf have a long time drummer who was a band member, or were they always a hired gun kind of?
So Jason Neal was the Carbon Leaf drummer for a very long time, and probably 10 years. It's so funny because that band they've been doing it for such a long time, and you forget how long it's been. But Jason was in the band for a long time. He had a couple kids. I don't know the ins and outs of the whole situation between them. I know that everything is cool between them. I just think that Jason needed to get off the road. I think that's pretty much the extent of it. I don't know any of the details really, but that year they were looking for a bunch of drummers, and then they eventually had me do the holiday thing, and they offered me the full-time gig after that.
Nice.
So that was kind of it, and it was a tough thing. I sat down with Steven, kind of told him what I was doing, and it was hard. It was a hard conversation, and but like I said, he was kind of transitioning to do a lot of solo acoustic shows and work on the book, do a lot of more speaking engagements. So it just didn't make. It made more sense for me to have a full-time thing that would pay the bills and just having more work.
Right.
And then it turned into being a full member and falling in love with the whole fan base and doing the podcast. So it's been a really great experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So another question for you. How do you feel being a band member versus a sideman? Because you've been able to dip into both worlds a lot. I mean, you still do sideman work, even though you are a band member, of course.
Yep.
But how do you feel about like going from one where you were doing a lot of sideman stuff to now like full-fledged band member?
Yeah, my ego has a hard time being a hired guy, and that's the truth. So I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the work, but ultimately I don't like not having a say in the goings on of either the music or the way, just the overall goings on of being in a band and stuff. I have a hard time not having a vote or a say. And not that I didn't have that. It's just, when you're a hired guy, they're not really consulting you all the time. And when things happen and you just have to kind of go along with it when it doesn't really fit your artistic, what you think should be happening. That's hard. That's a hard thing to keep your mouth shut. And, and I just, I love being a part of a team. I like bouncing ideas. I like being able to have my voice heard. It's just, it's good. It's a good situation, and they're all different. But yeah, I mean,
those are all great points. I mean,
yeah, it's hard. I mean, and people find out, it's like, if you can't decide, or if you have the problem that I have, like, if you have a big personality and you're opinionated, which I am, it's hard. You're not going to have as good of a time if you're a hired guy. If you have the skill set to, run a band or be more of a leader or be more of a equal parts of a team, then that's what you should do. It's definitely hindered me, and it's also gotten me further than I, thought I would. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Same question to you. Like, what do you, I can imagine being kind of like the business representative of Bronze is a big weight on your shoulders. It's a lot of work, I'm sure, to deal with.
It's definitely a lot of work. And, I will say, I mean, I resonate with so many of the points that you made there. I mean, I love being in a band. I love being part of a team, having a say, having my voice heard, all of that, being able to make all those important decisions, for better or worse. We've made some good decisions. We've made a lot of bad decisions, and we have to own up to that and take that responsibility, which is tough. And if a show sells great, we get to fly high and feel rewarded. But if a show doesn't sell great, we have to feel the pressure of that as the band members. And so, there are certainly ups and downs to both sides of it. And when you come in as a sideman, you're not as concerned with that stuff. You're just there you're doing one job. You're there to play your ass off and do that as best you can. And so, I feel like the grass is always greener, though. I sometimes I'm just like, man, wouldn't it be fun to go out and play with some more people? And then, those opportunities happen, but then you're like, oh man, you do that for a little bit. You're like, I really miss being in my band where it's more of a team thing and not so much, a group of individuals that are trying to make it happen together.
It's like you realize that you have to switch it up every now and then just to kind of open your brain back up, and then you come back with those new experiences in your bubble, which is like really fun to take those new things and bring it to your dudes,
Yeah. And I think it's really important to have those experiences too. Just the trying to balance the schedule though then is tricky, because as when you're a band member, that is your commitment 100%. There is no subbing yourself out for a band that you're a member of. I mean, maybe some bands do it that way, but certainly not our band. So either we are all doing something together or we're not. And so that means if we have one show booked and I get offered to go do a month of dates with Steven or somebody else, then I have to say no to that month of dates because there's 1 or 2 Bronze Radio shows on the books.
Right.
And that's, that's tricky, but at the end of the day, I think that camaraderie and just the support system that we have within the band is important, and you have to make those tough decisions and just say, you know what, sorry, I can't do that.
Yeah, and I feel like if that's a really great way you describe that. It's like if someone asks you to do something, like the first year I was a member of Carbon Leaf, I was supposed to play a wedding in, say, I think it was like July 13th or something or a couple of years ago. And then I found out that Carbon Leaf had a show on like the next day in Richmond, and I could not make the 2 days where it just would not have worked out timing wise. And I had to ditch this like really good paying wedding gig to just do this one gig with Carbon Leaf, where if it was like a day apart, I would have made like triple the money. So it's like it
right.
kind of ruins that week or that month. But I find that if something like that happens, it gets your like hustle brain going, and you're like, all right, well, I missed out on that, so how am I going to make up for what I could have made in that week? And I try to book something. Luckily I can book solo gigs, so I booked maybe 2 solo gigs that week, and I kind of made it back. So you have to use your resources at hand to figure out the ways that you can like maximize whatever money you could make and whatever you lost to, since you weren't able to do some gig, or I don't know. It's a pain in the ass.
It can be, but it's hard. You can't always have it all. You got to prioritize. And I will say that I think being in a band, it's important to know that everyone is in it to win it, and they're not out there just trying to like find another opportunity. Right. And so it's, you can never make someone feel bad because you have to miss an opportunity, because like what I want to be doing is playing with my band all the time. Yeah. And so, and if other opportunities fall into place that go around that and don't interfere with that, amazing. Love it. I would love to be busy 350 days a year, but, sometimes it just is impossible to do when you're committed to one thing like that. And that loyalty to have for that band or whatever artist that, another drummer plays for, like, it's never a good look if you're like, all right, well, this other thing, I want to do this, but I don't want to look bad to my main priority here. So you never want to drop the main priority to just do a one-off gig with somebody. It's just so short-sighted, you just having loyalty of your band and being a part of that family and a part of that team is just like, there's really no replacement for it, in my opinion. Yeah. And I think that's what keeps bands together. I mean, Carbon Leaf has been together. You guys, 25? Is it 25 or more years? I think it's 27 now. 27. Wow. I mean, that's amazing. And we're about half that, but yeah, we did the 25th anniversary. So maybe it's definitely at least 26. Wow. So it's a long time. That's a long time to be around the same people. That's unbelievable. But I mean, it just goes to show that dedication and, decades of hard work, and everybody still does it and loves it. And that's amazing. And that's I feel like that's where we are too. And like I said, it's been maybe about half as long. I think we've been together for about 12 or 13 years now. Yeah. But that's what's kept us together, is that, we still talk to each other on the phone many, many times a week, and we're constantly emailing and texting all day and scheming, like, what's the next thing that we're focusing on. And so, I don't know, we need that. We need that to keep each other inspired and keep this going. All right, that is the episode part 1 with Rob Griffith. Please stick around for the music. For the sneak preview of not sneak preview, we're just going to play it. We're just going to play the song of the new song from Bronze Radio Return, Still Wandering. And make sure you tune in next week for part 2
of this two-parter, and I'll see you then. Bye.
My home is not a highway, a straight road to follow, on well-known lone pavements I roam, through wide open space with no maps or foot tracks, no turn backs. I'm in deep. I'm still out here and I'm still moving along, still wondering. I'm still at it, I'm still keeping on, still wondering. I'm not lost, I'm still just wondering. My aim is distant, far away. I'm believing in long reaching. I'm leaning in and I'm hanging on. I'm still out here and I'm still moving along, still wondering. I'm still at it, I'm still keeping on, still wondering. I'm not lost, I'm still just wondering where I go. I am not certain that I know I will be fine. Where I go, I am not certain that I know. All in good time, all in good time. And if this is being lost, then may I never be found. I'm still